In this video, we're going to look at using meaningful naming conventions for the ID property. Before we talk about it, helpful to think about this, like, well, what's the purpose of the ID property? It's to identify objects, so what makes a good ID? So now you've paused and thought about it. Here's an example of a very bad use of IDs, where I've got MSGA 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so what's happening if from MSGA 1 I trigger 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's jumped to this second one here. When actually I wanted to trigger this one here. So firstly, what's important is that these IDs be unique. And I maybe call this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, greetings humanoid, I am Bizarre from 3001, and now from there, maybe I want to trigger 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's the first thing that's important about IDs. They should be unique. There's something else though, which isn't very good about these IDs at the moment, and they're not very helpful. So what do I mean by helpful? Let's suppose that I'd made, I decide, for example, here, Congo of Humanities and Cliches, I want to have an accent on the E because that's technically correct. What I need to do is go back to my script, find the right point, and make that change. And that's manageable when you have a small number of messages, but it becomes increasingly hard as you add more and more messages. And these IDs at the moment, they are like noise. And it's hard for me to kind of see how this message, I'm Bizarre from 3001, go on to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like, I've no idea what that means. So both for the purposes of making it easier to find messages you want to change and also understanding how the messages are linking together, we're going to use descriptive IDs. They should have meaningful names. So I'm going to demonstrate that. I'm going to call this something like bot/greet. And this stuff will be clearer later. But so that the purpose there is I look at this and I can see that this message is about the bot doing a greeting. This one, the bot is introducing its name, so I might call bot/give-name or something like that, because it's the bot giving its name, so that's descriptive. And here, my ID is something like bot/menacing announcement, or something like that. And now, you can see the error, ID blah blah blah, triggered by step blah blah blah, does not exist because obviously I changed that ID. But notice now, when I say greetings humanoid, what does that go on to? That goes on to bot/give-name. And this is easier for me to read through and be like, okay, so to understand what this script does, what's going to happen is the bot's going to greet them, then it's going to give its name. I can already see from this what's happening next. So then I want to give name, it says Bizarre from 2001, then what's the bot going to do? Well, the bot is then going to give a menacing announcement. And I've noticed I actually spelt that wrong, menacing. And now, this is easier for me to follow through the flow, but also, I want to change that, don't I? Is it greet? No. Is it give name? No. Menacing announcement? Oh yeah, it's that one, isn't it? So there, I'm going to use an accent. And also notice that I'm using something consistent. They all have a consistent style, and because it has a consistent style, it makes it easy for me to very quickly pass what's going on. And the style doesn't massively matter. So for example, this ID could have been something like first greeting. This one could have been then give name. It's a very different style. It's not using dashes or anything like that. The style is not too important. I've chosen for this style because I think this is quite clear to separate the kind of like the action from this bot bit. And the reason why I want that first bot bit to be clear will become obvious in a later video. But just to kind of show you how you might kind of rename these, because the name's not, you don't have to be too picky. So this one might be ID bot/greeting, like that's pretty similar. This one here could be introduce self. This one here, instead of menacing announcement, it could be declare purpose, because the bot's declaring its purpose. Then you obviously need to change the corresponding triggers. So this one, after the greeting, the bot should introduce itself, and then the bot should declare its purpose after it's introduced itself. So there's lots of good names you could use, but all these names are much better than MSGO1, 12345, blah blah blah, avocado. So give it meaningful names. So to check your understanding, I want you to pause, look at these messages here, and consider what might be good IDs for them. So now you've had a chance to pause and think about that. Here's what I might suggest. What does the weather seem like today? If the bot's saying that, it might be something like bot/inquire-weather, or weather-inquiry, something like that. Both of those sound good to me. I've come to eat your brains. That might be something like bot/make-threat, or bot/brain-hungry, because the bot is brain hungry apparently. So lots of good possible names, much clearer than anything like MSGO4. So common blockers if you are to kind of rename the IDs, you might get this kind of error here. I want you to pause and see if you can figure out what's going wrong. So now you've had to think about it, let's look at it. And it says the ID bot/ground announcement triggered by step bot-given name does not exist. So this is quite a helpful error. So it tells us it's from this step here, and that ID being triggered, grand announcement, does not exist. But I'm like, oh, but it does exist here, I think. But I look at them too, and I see that there's actually a slight difference. This one is missing an N from here. So these two are actually subtly different IDs. So if we look at making that change then, because this is two N's announcement, this is a single N, two N's are the correct spelling. So let me change that. Now it's working. Fantastic. Here's another example error you might run into, or if someone ran into it, how would you help them solve it? Just pause, have a think. And this is a syntax error, and hopefully you're familiar by now. Syntax error is this idea of constructing the arrays and objects is a common cause. Let's check we've got all those things in place. I'm going to scan down here, make sure that I've got my commas separating my elements. I do. Let me scan down the lines to make sure key value pairs all have commas after. This one does, this one doesn't. So this one's missing a comma there, separating this key value pair from the one afterwards. So to embed your learning from this video, now you can refactor your Chatbot conversation, making sure that IDs are following a clear and consistent naming convention. So in this video, we looked at naming conventions for IDs and how to make them more meaningful. In the next video, we're going to go back to looking at objects, and we're going to look at array properties inside an object.